The house was always quiet in the early morning. The kind of quiet that made every small sound feel louder than it really was. The ticking clock in the hallway, the soft hum of the air system, the distant call of birds outside tall glass windows. The man liked it this way. Silence helped him think. It helped him feel in control. He lived alone in a large home that many people admired from a distance. From the outside, it looked perfect. Clean lines, wide gates, security cameras, and gardens that were trimmed every week. Inside, everything had its place. Nothing was messy. Nothing was loud. Yet behind all this order, the man felt something missing. He had money, respect, and power, but he was never sure who truly cared for him as a person. People around him were polite. They smiled, spoke kindly, and praised his success. Some visited often, some called regularly, and some only appeared when there was something to gain. He noticed patterns over the years. When business was good, many were close. When things slowed down, the calls became fewer. He learned to read faces and tones, but even then, he was never fully sure what was real. That morning began like any other. He woke up early, dressed neatly, and walked through the house with calm steps. The maid had already arrived. She always came before sunrise. She cleaned quietly, careful not to disturb him. She greeted him with a simple nod and a soft voice, never trying to start long conversations. He appreciated that she had worked in the house for several years. She did her job well and never complained. She did not ask personal questions or make requests beyond her work. To most people in the house, she was nearly invisible. To him, she was part of the routine, like the morning light or the evening breeze. He sat down at the breakfast table with a cup of tea. As he lifted it to his lips, a strange pressure filled his chest. It was sudden and sharp. His breath caught. For a brief moment, he thought it would pass. He had felt stress before. He had ignored pain before. But this time was different. The cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the room. He tried to stand, but his legs felt weak. The pressure grew stronger. His vision blurred. He reached out, hoping to grab the table, but his body failed him. He fell to the floor, hitting it hard. The maid heard the noise and rushed in. She froze when she saw him lying still. Her heart raced. She called his name softly, then louder. There was no response. She dropped to her knees beside him, shaking with fear. She checked his breathing, then ran to call for help. Within minutes, the house was full of movement. Emergency workers arrived. Phones rang. Messages were sent. The calm home turned into a place of worry and noise. He was taken away on a stretcher, while people stood around watching, whispering, and making calls at the hospital. Doctors worked quickly. After hours of tests and quiet talks behind closed doors, they gave a clear message. He was alive, but unresponsive. His body was stable, but his mind showed no signs of waking up. They said it could be temporary, or it could last much longer. The news spread fast. People who had not visited in months suddenly appeared. Some came with worried faces. Some brought flowers. Some asked careful questions about his condition. The hospital room became crowded with visitors who took turns standing by his bed. He could hear them. That was the truth. No one knew. His body felt heavy, and opening his eyes took effort he could not yet manage. But his mind was awake. Clear, aware, he heard every word spoken near him. He felt every touch, every pause, every breath in the room. At first he was confused. He thought he might be dreaming. He tried to move his fingers. Nothing happened. He tried to speak. No sound came out. Panic rose inside him, but he forced himself to stay calm. Slowly, he understood what had happened. His body was resting, but his mind had not shut down. Doctors came and went. They spoke in careful tones, choosing words that sounded hopeful but uncertain. Some visitors cried softly. Some stood stiff and silent. Others checked their phones while pretending to care. He listened. He heard concern mixed with fear, fear mixed with impatience. He heard people talk about schedules, responsibilities, and stress. He heard someone mention how difficult things would be if he did not wake up. He heard another person quietly ask about documents and accounts. Each word felt like a small cut. Then the room emptied. Visiting hours ended. Only machines and soft lights remained. The maid entered quietly, carrying a small bag. She stood near the door, unsure if she was allowed to be there. After a moment, she walked closer to the bed. She did not cry. She did not speak loudly. She pulled a chair close and sat down. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked tired. "I don't know if you can hear me," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I hope you can." She told him the house was being taken care of. She said she cleaned his room and kept everything just the way he liked it. She said the plants were watered and the doors were locked every night. Her words were simple, ordinary, honest. She stayed for a long time, sitting quietly, sometimes talking, sometimes just being there. When a nurse came in, the maid stood up quickly, apologizing for staying late. The nurse allowed her to remain for a few more minutes. When she left, the room felt colder. Days passed. He remained still. His mind continued to listen. People visited less often now. The flowers wilted. Conversations grew shorter. Some visits stopped completely, but every morning the maid came. She came after finishing her work at the house. She washed her hands carefully before entering the room. She spoke to him as if he were awake. She never talked about money or reward. She spoke about the weather, the sunlight, and how peaceful the garden looked that day. One afternoon, two relatives stood near the bed, speaking in low voices. They thought no one else was listening. They discussed the future, plans, and possibilities. Their words were careful, but their meaning was clear. After they left, the maid came in. She noticed his hand looked dry and gently applied lotion, moving slowly, respectfully. Her touch was light. There was no rush. He felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he stopped thinking about control. He stopped thinking about power. He simply listened. That night, as the room grew dark, he made a decision. He would not rush to wake up. He would stay silent a little longer. He wanted to know who would stay when there was nothing to gain. He wanted to see what love looked like when no one was watching. The test had begun, though no one knew it yet. Outside, the city moved on. Inside the quiet hospital room, truth was slowly revealing itself. One voice at a time. The days after the man's collapse brought a strange rhythm to the house and the hospital. Outside, life continued as usual. People went to work, met friends, and made plans. Inside, everything moved differently. There was tension in every glance, hesitation in every step, and a quiet test unfolding that only one person truly understood. Visitors came and went, each with their own expressions, their own hidden reasons. Some were worried, standing by the bed with anxious faces, whispering prayers under their breath. Others wore masks of concern while their eyes drifted toward watches or phones, calculating how long they needed to stay before leaving. The man, lying still, could hear everything. Every word, every sigh, every glance was observed by a mind that refused to sleep. The maid became his constant presence. She did not rush, did not force herself into conversation, but moved with a steady rhythm, tending to small tasks that others overlooked. She cleaned the room with care, made sure the bed was arranged neatly, wiped dust from the shelves, and checked that the water glass was full. She spoke to him softly, describing the sun outside, the sound of birds, the way the flowers in the garden were blooming that week. Her voice was calm, steady, and genuine. He noticed the difference between her and the others immediately. Her attention was not transactional. It was not a performance. She stayed not because she had to, not because she expected reward, but because it was the right thing to do. Her loyalty was quiet, unspoken, but unmistakable. One morning, a cousin arrived. She looked nervous, holding a bouquet of flowers that seemed too large for the hospital room. She leaned close to the bed and spoke softly, telling him about her life, the challenges she was facing, and how much she wished he could wake up to guide her. She left after a short visit. The man could hear her whisper to a friend in the hallway about money matters and inheritance. and how she hoped the situation would be resolved in her favor. The contrast made him ache. Here was someone who smiled, brought gifts, and spoke kindly. But the words were shallow, and the intentions were different. Then the maid entered. She said nothing about herself. She did not try to impress him. She simply told him about the weather, the quiet day, and how she had arranged the shelves. She cleaned, adjusted his pillow, and sat quietly for a while before leaving. There were no hidden motives, no hints of reward, only care. The man's mind began to piece together a larger picture. He understood why people sometimes disappointed him, why relationships were complicated, why love was not always easy to find. It was not because people were bad. It was because convenience often disguised itself as care, and true concern required more effort than many were willing to give. Meanwhile, the hospital staff also noticed patterns. Some nurses were attentive, checking machines and medications diligently. Others were polite but distant, completing tasks mechanically and moving on. Visitors occasionally argued with staff over small details, each assuming their loved one was asleep and unaware. Little did they know, the man's mind was alive, analyzing every movement, every reaction. Late one afternoon, a friend arrived who had not been seen in years. He expressed sorrow, sharing memories of laughter and past adventures. His eyes were bright with concern, and his tone was warm. Yet within moments, he began asking questions about property, investments, and potential changes to accounts. The man felt a mix of sadness and disappointment. Even those who seemed sincere were sometimes divided between affection and opportunity. The maid entered shortly after. She did not mention the visitor or his questions. Instead, she tidied the area, made sure the room was comfortable, and spoke softly, reassuring him that she was there. She brought a small tray with a fresh drink and adjusted the blinds to let in the gentle sunlight. Her attention was patient and considerate, showing care that had no condition attached. As days went by, the man's awareness grew deeper. He began noticing small gestures that often went unrecognized. A nurse remembered his favorite blanket. A janitor quietly replaced a broken lamp without announcing it. A doctor, visiting the room for routine checks, paused to straighten the pillow and smile, acknowledging the humanity of the person beneath the sheets. Each act was small but meaningful. Each showed a level of respect and thoughtfulness, that contrasted sharply with the noise of visitors chasing convenience. One evening, the maid stayed later than usual. The room was quiet, and the soft hum of the machines became a comforting background. She sat in a chair by the bed, hands folded, eyes attentive, and spoke gently. "I know it's hard sometimes," she said, "to trust people, to see who cares. But I will stay. I will be here. And I will do what is right, even if no one notices." Her words, simple and unadorned, struck a chord. He felt a wave of emotion, not sadness or anger, but a quiet acknowledgement. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen not for his wealth, his influence, or his reputation, but for his humanity. The part of him that still longed for connection, the pattern of daily life continued. The man's relatives and friends began to adjust their visits according to convenience. Some disappeared completely. Others came only briefly, leaving flowers or gifts as a token of concern. The maid remained consistent. Each day, she arrived early, attended to his needs, spoke softly, and left quietly. Her loyalty was constant, unwavering, and honest. He began to understand a profound truth. Real care is not measured by grand gestures, gifts, or attention when it is convenient. Real care is present when it is difficult, when it is unnoticed, and when it asks for nothing in return. One afternoon, a family member argued with a nurse about the speed of his recovery. "We need updates," she exclaimed, her voice sharp and impatient. "He's family. We have the right to know every detail." The nurse tried to remain calm, explaining the process, the protocols, and the time it takes for a body to recover. The family member muttered, clearly frustrated, and stormed out. The maid entered quietly, picking up the clipboard the nurse had left behind. She adjusted the sheets and whispered softly, "It's okay. Don't worry. Everything is under control." He felt a warmth that contrasted with the coldness of earlier visits. While many were caught up in fear, impatience, or expectation, she was there for him alone, and it made all the difference. Night came, and the hospital lights dimmed. The room grew silent except for the beeping machines and the gentle rustle of the maid adjusting his blankets. She paused, looked at him for a moment, and spoke softly. "You are not alone. Ever. Even if the world forgets, I will be here." The man's mind held on to her words. They were not grand, not poetic, but they carried truth. They carried loyalty, honesty, and genuine care. He realized that this was what he had been searching for all along, a presence that did not ask for anything in return. That did not manipulate, that simply existed in honesty and kindness. From that moment, the test he had unconsciously set for himself began to take shape. He would watch, listen, and learn who stayed, who left, who cared, and who pretended. Every visit, every word, every gesture became part of a larger picture. He understood that love and care were rare. They were quiet. They were patient. They were not always obvious, but they were real when found. The days blended together. The man continued his silent observation. The maid became the anchor of this new world, a constant in the shifting sea of visitors, relatives, and staff. She remained steady, consistent, and true, unknowingly teaching him what genuine care looked like. As the sun set on another day, the man's heart grew calmer. He knew he had a long journey ahead, but with each passing day, he understood more about people, about trust, and about the quiet strength of loyalty that did not seek recognition. He did not move. He did not speak, but his mind was awake, alive, and learning. In the midst of silence, a truth had begun to form, a truth about love, about loyalty, and about the courage it takes to remain kind when the world often chooses convenience over care. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of life inside the hospital room continued quietly, unnoticed by most outside. The man remained still, but his mind was sharp, observing every small detail with clarity. He had begun to see not only who visited and why, but also the subtle differences between those who cared for appearances and those who cared from the heart. The maid had become an essential presence in his daily life. She arrived each morning without fail, her uniform clean and her movements calm. She spoke gently to him, never too much, never too little, always just enough to remind him that he was not alone. She tended to every detail, from arranging the sheets to adjusting his blanket to wiping dust from the windowsill. Each gesture was done with care, a quiet demonstration of her loyalty. One day a doctor approached the bed with concern. "Your blood pressure is slightly irregular," he said, checking the monitors. "We need to monitor you closely for the next few days." He jotted down notes and left the room. The man listened carefully, noting the shift in tone, the urgency masked by professionalism. He felt a sense of gratitude toward the staff who were diligent. But he also realized that care alone was not enough without understanding and kindness. Meanwhile, visitors continued to come and go. Some relatives seemed anxious, their voices raised over trivial matters. Each concerned about inheritance, property, or future control. Friends tried to cheer him with stories of past adventures, but their smiles did not always reach their eyes. He understood the difference between genuine concern and superficial interest. It was a painful realization, but it was also enlightening. The maid's behavior remained consistent, quietly contrasting with the noise of the world. One afternoon, a family member argued with the nurse over the timing of medication. Their voice was sharp, demanding, almost angry. The maid, who had been standing quietly near the door, approached and spoke softly, ensuring that the patient was comfortable and that everything was handled properly. She did not argue. She did not demand attention. She simply performed her duty with precision and compassion. The man's mind began to piece together the depth of her loyalty. She stayed not because of obligation, but because of a personal sense of responsibility and care. Her attention was unselfish, and her presence was steady. No gifts, no praise, no attention, seeking just care. He felt a deep respect for her that grew stronger each day. One evening, The hospital received a sudden emergency. Another patient required immediate attention in a neighboring room. The staff was stretched thin, and chaos briefly took over the quiet rhythm of the hospital. In the midst of this, the maid noticed a minor complication in his position on the bed. The blanket had slipped, and he could have been uncomfortable or at risk of pressure sores. Without hesitation, she adjusted him carefully, smoothing the sheets and repositioning his body. She checked his breathing, ensuring he was safe, and then returned to her routine tasks. The man observed everything. While others panicked, worried, or fled the room to help elsewhere, she acted without fear or hesitation. Her instincts were grounded in genuine care, and he recognized that what she had done was more than duty, it was loyalty. Compassion and courage all combined. Days turned into weeks, and the contrast between the maid and the other visitors became more apparent. Those who were loud, demanding, or attention-seeking gradually drifted away, while she remained. She did not speak of rewards, nor did she expect recognition. Her loyalty was unwavering. The man realized that true love and care often exist in small, quiet gestures that go unnoticed by the world. One night, as the lights dimmed and the room grew quiet, the maid sat beside him for a long time. She held a small tray with water and a soft cloth for cleaning, but she also brought a sense of calm and presence that no one else could provide. She spoke in a whisper, almost as if she were sharing a secret with the world itself. "I have known what it means to care for someone quietly," she said softly. "Sometimes it is easier to leave, to walk away. But I will stay. I will be here, and I will do what is right, even if no one notices." Her words moved him in ways he could not express. There was no drama, no exaggeration, just the quiet power of honesty and unwavering commitment. He understood that her life had not been easy, that she had probably faced challenges and struggles, yet she remained steadfast. The man began to reflect on his own life and the relationships he had formed. He thought about the people who had come and gone, those who had smiled for convenience and those who had stayed when it was difficult. The maid's quiet dedication showed him what true care really meant. It was not measured in gifts or words or attention. It was measured in presence, in consistency, and in the willingness to do what was right without seeking reward. As time passed, the hospital staff also began to notice her unwavering dedication. Nurses and doctors who had worked there for years observed her patience, her calmness, and her understanding of the patient's needs. They respected her not just as a maid, but as someone who brought stability and care into a chaotic environment. The man listened, learned, and grew in understanding. He realized that the world was full of people who acted for recognition, for convenience, or for gain. But there were also those rare individuals who acted out of genuine compassion, without expecting anything in return. The maid was one of those rare individuals, and her loyalty became the anchor that gave him hope. One afternoon, the maid shared a story from her own life, speaking softly and without expectation. She spoke about challenges she had faced, times when she had helped others without anyone noticing, and moments when she had felt powerless yet continued to act out of care. Her story was simple, honest, and human. It revealed the depth of her empathy and the strength of her character. The man felt a profound sense of connection. He was struck by her resilience, her patience, and her unwavering dedication. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope and trust in humanity. He realized that love and care were not always loud or visible. They could exist quietly, persistently, and powerfully, shaping lives without fanfare. As the evening approached and the hospital lights dimmed, the maid stayed by his side, adjusting the sheets and speaking softly about the day, the weather, and the small things that mattered. She brought a sense of normalcy and peace to the room, reminding him that even in difficult times, kindness and loyalty could prevail. The man's mind, still active and alert, absorbed every detail. He began to understand that the maid's presence was more than service. It was a reflection of what genuine human connection could be. It was a lesson he would carry with him, a truth that could not be measured in wealth, status, or power. The days continued in this quiet rhythm. Visitors became less frequent, some discouraged by the lack of drama, some busy with their own lives. Yet the maid remained, a constant presence in a world that seemed increasingly uncertain. Her loyalty and care became the foundation upon which the man could rebuild his understanding of trust and love. In the silence of the hospital room, a profound truth emerged. Real care is not about appearances. It is not about gestures that can be measured or gifts that can be counted. Real care is about presence, consistency, and the willingness to act with honesty and compassion. Even when no one is watching, the man listened, learned and appreciated every small act, every quiet gesture, and every moment of genuine attention. The maid's presence became a guiding light, teaching him that love and loyalty are strongest when they are quiet, selfless, and unwavering. He remained still, silent, and unresponsive to the outside world, but his mind was alive, absorbing every detail, every word and every gesture. The lessons he was learning from the maid were shaping his understanding of human connection, trust, and the true meaning of care. As night fell and the room grew dark, the maid adjusted the blankets, checked the monitors, and spoke softly one last time before leaving. "I will stay," she whispered. "I will be here even when no one else is. That is what care is. That is what love is." Her words echoed in his mind, leaving a deep impression that would guide him in the days and weeks to come. In the quiet of the hospital room, amidst the beeping machines and soft lights, the man began to understand the power of loyalty, the value of true care, and the rare beauty of a heart that gives without expectation. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the hospital blinds, casting gentle lines across the room. The man lay still, motionless to the casual observer, but his mind had never been more alert. Each sound, each movement, each whispered word was etched into his memory. He had been watching, listening, and learning for weeks. The patterns of behavior, the intentions behind words, and the depth of loyalty were clearer than ever. Visitors continued to come and go, though their numbers had begun to thin. Some had grown tired of pretending, realizing that the patient's condition offered little opportunity for display. Others were genuinely worried but unsure how to act. The contrast between those who were here for appearance and those who were here for care had become undeniable. The maid, however, was a constant. She arrived as usual, her steps quiet, her uniform neat, and her presence calm. She moved through the room with purpose, attending to the smallest details. She arranged the pillows, checked the monitors, adjusted the blankets, and spoke softly about the sunlight, the quiet of the hallway, and the way the garden outside was changing with the season. Her words were simple, her tone steady, and her care evident in every gesture. That day, a distant relative arrived unexpectedly. She had not visited in months and had not called in weeks. Her voice was hesitant as she approached the bed, offering a bouquet of flowers and soft words about concern and hope. The man, aware of her presence, listened closely. Within moments, he could hear the shift in her tone. The subtle impatience, the questions whispered when she thought no one was listening. She was polite, but her concern was mingled with expectation. The maid noticed her arrival as well. She adjusted the blankets, wiped the surface of the bedside table, and smiled politely. Her attention remained on the man, not the visitor. She answered questions about his comfort and the daily routine with calm precision. There was no judgment, no complaint, no desire to compete for attention. She was steady, as she had always been. Later in the day, a doctor entered the room with a routine check. He noted some improvements and suggested that, with continued care, recovery might progress. The relatives listened eagerly, asking questions, making suggestions, and offering advice. Some were concerned about appearances, some genuinely worried, and others quietly calculating the implications for property and inheritance. The man noted every nuance, understanding more deeply than ever the motives behind actions. After the doctor left, the maid entered quietly. She checked his vitals, adjusted the pillows, and cleaned the area. She spoke softly, recounting the day's events in a gentle voice. Her attention was focused entirely on him. She did not ask questions, did not make demands, and did not seek praise. She acted purely out of care, with honesty and dedication. That evening, a minor emergency occurred in the hospital. A sudden call over the intercom sent staff rushing to another floor. In the momentary confusion, the man's blanket slipped, and his position on the bed shifted uncomfortably. The maid noticed immediately. She moved quickly, adjusting the blankets, checking his comfort, and ensuring that he was safe. She acted without hesitation, without fear, and without concern for recognition. Her actions were instinctive, grounded in genuine concern. The man observed her closely, appreciating the depth of her loyalty and dedication. He realized that while others might act for attention, recognition, or obligation, her care was sincere, unwavering, and consistent. She was present in ways that were invisible to the casual observer, but monumental to those who understood the true value of quiet. Consistent care. That night, as the room grew quiet, the maid sat beside him for a long while. She adjusted the blanket, checked the water, and spoke softly. "I will stay," she whispered. "Even when it is hard, even when no one else is here, I will stay." That is what care is. That is what loyalty is. The man's mind reflected on her words. He understood now that he had been testing not just the loyalty of those around him, but the very nature of human connection. He realized that love and care were not always obvious, not always loud, and not always recognized. They often existed quietly, persistently, and powerfully, shaping lives in ways that could not be measured. The next morning brought another surprise. His longtime business associate arrived at the hospital, expressing deep concern and discussing future plans. However, the conversation quickly turned to accounts, investments, and potential benefits. The man listened, noticing the contrast between words of concern and the underlying intentions. He understood that appearances could be misleading and that true care was revealed in action, not speech. Later, the maid entered the room with her usual calm presence. She did not comment on the visitors or their behavior. She focused entirely on the patient, adjusting the sheets, checking monitors, and speaking gently. Her loyalty was unwavering, her dedication quiet but undeniable. She did not seek recognition, did not demand praise, and did not act for personal gain. She simply cared. In the days that followed, the man's awareness grew even deeper. He began to recognize the small gestures that often went unnoticed by others. The nurse who remembered his preferred pillow, the orderly who quietly replaced a light bulb, the doctor who paused to smile and offer reassurance. Each act was small but meaningful, and he began to see the difference between genuine care and superficial attention. One afternoon, Maid shared a story from her past. She spoke of challenges she had faced, times when she had helped others without recognition, and moments when she had acted out of compassion despite difficulty. Her story was simple, honest, and human. It revealed her empathy, resilience, an unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The man listened with growing admiration. He understood that her loyalty was rare, that her presence was a gift, that her actions were guided by a moral compass that valued honesty and care above all else. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of trust and hope in human connection. As evening approached, the maid adjusted his blankets and prepared the room for the night. She spoke softly, offering comfort and reassurance. "You are not alone," she said. "Even when the world forgets, I will be here." That is what care means. The man's heart swelled with gratitude. He realized that the test he had set for himself, though unspoken and unconscious, had revealed a profound truth. True care, true loyalty, and true love were quiet, steadfast, and selfless. They were present when it was difficult, unseen when it was unrecognized, and unwavering when the world turned away as night fell. He reflected on the lessons he had learned. He understood the difference between those who acted for appearances and those who acted from the heart. He recognized the courage it took to remain loyal without expectation, and he appreciated the profound impact of small, consistent acts of care. The maid's presence had become a guiding light in a world often filled with uncertainty and superficiality. Her loyalty, honesty, and compassion had taught him the true meaning of human connection. He remained still, silent and unresponsive outwardly, but his mind was alive, absorbing every gesture, every word, and every lesson. In her quiet dedication, he'd found a reflection of the love and loyalty he'd been seeking all his life. In the silence of the hospital room, amidst the soft hum of machines and the gentle glow of evening lights, the man realized that the world could be harsh, uncertain, and unpredictable. But genuine care and loyalty would always shine through. The maid's actions had revealed a truth that could not be measured in wealth, status, or power. It was a truth that existed quietly, persistently, and powerfully, a truth about love, humanity, and the courage to remain steadfast when it mattered most. That night, as she left the room after ensuring everything was in order, she whispered softly, "I will stay. I will always stay." The words lingered in the air, and the man knew that her loyalty, care, and quiet courage had changed the way he would see the world, the people in it. In the meaning of genuine love, the morning sunlight broke through the blinds, filling the hospital room with a soft, warm glow. Birds chirped outside, and the faint hum of machines blended with the gentle rustle of curtains. The man lay still in his bed, silent and motionless to anyone who might glance through the doorway. Yet inside, his mind had been awake, observing, learning, and growing stronger with each passing day. The test he had set for himself, though unspoken, had reached its final stage. Visitors had come and gone over the past weeks, many gradually retreating as the days turned long. Some had grown tired of pretending, while others had revealed their true priorities, leaving the man to quietly assess the depth of their concern. Their visits had been a mix of genuine worry, casual politeness, and subtle self-interest. He had learned to read these differences carefully, listening not just to words, but to tone, timing, and body language. The contrast between superficial attention and authentic care had never been clearer. Through all this, the maid had remained a constant. She arrived each morning with calm steps, her uniform neat, her hands steady, and her voice soft. She adjusted the sheets, arranged the pillows, checked the monitors, and made sure the room was comfortable. She spoke to him of ordinary things, the sunlight, the gentle breeze outside, the flowers in the garden, and her words were always gentle, thoughtful, and honest. She did not expect anything in return. She did not ask for praise. She simply cared. And her presence had become the anchor in a world that often felt uncertain and shallow. One afternoon, the man felt a subtle shift inside him. A wave of energy and awareness stirred through his body. It was faint at first, a flicker of motion in his fingers and toes. He concentrated, willing himself to move more, and slowly his eyes opened. The first thing he saw was the soft glow of the room, then the steady figure of the maid sitting nearby, watching quietly and attentively. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she remained composed. Sensing the magnitude of the moment, he tried to speak, but only a faint sound escaped. He coughed softly and adjusted his position. The maid leaned closer immediately, her hands gentle, offering support. Her face reflected relief and quiet joy, yet she remained calm, not making the moment about herself. She guided him to sit up slightly, supporting his back with a careful hand, and spoke in a soothing voice. "You're awake," she whispered. "Take your time. I'm here." The man looked around the room, taking in the familiar details, and then his gaze fell on the door where visitors often appeared. He remembered the faces, the words, the intentions. The mask of concern worn by some had slipped over time, revealing their true motives. But the maid's presence had been unwavering. She had never wavered, never pretended, and never sought recognition. She had been his true companion, his silent guardian. In the following hours, the man slowly regained strength. The nurse arrived for routine checks and noticed the subtle movements. She called the doctor, who quickly assessed the patient's condition. The hospital room became a place of careful attention, yet the man's focus remained on the maid. She had been the one constant throughout this journey, showing care that was genuine and steadfast. Later that day, some family members arrived, eager to see him awake. They brought flowers, gifts, and soft words of concern. The man observed them, noting the sincerity in some and the performative nature in others. He did not speak at first, choosing to take in the nuances of their expressions and actions. He realized that while many had pretended to care, few had shown the quiet loyalty that had been present throughout his unconscious days. The maid moved gently around the room, adjusting the blankets and preparing a fresh glass of water. She remained focused on his comfort, her voice soft, describing the garden outside and the sunlight that had begun to fade. She did not seek attention from the visitors or try to highlight her role. She was simply present, steady, and attentive. As the day progressed, the man spoke for the first time clearly. His voice was quiet but firm. He expressed gratitude, not only for the care that had been provided but for the presence that had been constant. His eyes met the maid's, and in that moment, a deep understanding passed between them. Words were not necessary. The sincerity in their connection was unmistakable. He turned his attention to the visitors. Some were surprised at his awareness and newfound strength. Others were caught off guard by the realization that he had been observing them all along. The contrast between those who had acted out of genuine concern and those who had sought recognition became painfully clear. Yet the man did not dwell on anger or disappointment. Instead, he chose clarity, acknowledgement, and action. Over the next few days, carefully navigated his interactions with family and friends. He thanked those who had shown genuine care, while gently distancing himself from those whose concern had been performative. He realized that relationships were built not only on affection, but also on consistency, honesty, and presence. The maid had taught him this without speaking about it directly. Her actions had been the lesson itself. The maid continued her daily routine, never expecting reward or recognition. She assisted the man with meals, helped him practice walking slowly, and kept the room tidy and organized. Her loyalty was unwavering, and her presence brought a sense of peace and stability. The man recognized that her care was a reflection of a deeper understanding of humanity, one that valued quiet dedication above showy gestures. One evening, as the sun set and cast long shadows across the room, the man reflected on the journey he had experienced. He thought about the people who had visited, the words spoken, the intentions revealed. He understood that true care is rare, often quiet, and sometimes overlooked. It is measured not by appearances, gifts, or words, but by presence, consistency, and selflessness. He approached the maid, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "I want to thank you," he said. "You stayed when no one else did. You cared without expecting anything. You showed me what loyalty and love really mean." The maid looked at him with humility and a gentle smile. She did not boast, nor did she seek praise. Her eyes reflected warmth, understanding, and a quiet satisfaction. "I only did what was right," she said. "Caring is not always easy, but it is always worth it." The man felt a profound sense of gratitude and respect. He realized that his test of the people around him had succeeded, not through grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but through quiet observation and understanding. The maid's loyalty had been the constant, the truth amidst uncertainty, and the guide to recognizing genuine human connection. In the days that followed, the man's recovery continued steadily. He regained strength, began to walk with assistance, and slowly returned to the routines of his life. He remained attentive to the people around him, discerning between those who sought attention and those who acted from the heart. The maid's example had changed him, teaching him patience, humility, the value of selfless care. He made changes in his home and life, ensuring that loyalty and genuine concern were recognized and valued. He offered opportunities to those who had shown dedication, particularly to the maid, providing her with stability, respect, and the chance to build a future she deserved. His appreciation was not performative. It was a reflection of deep understanding and gratitude. The story of his unconscious days, the observations and the quiet lessons of loyalty and care became a personal reflection rather than a tale for others. He did not seek to broadcast it, nor did he allow it to become a spectacle. The true message was personal: the value of genuine care, the rarity of loyalty, and the beauty of actions that speak louder than words. As the man walked through his home once again, Feeling the strength returning to his body, he paused to reflect on the journey. He saw the quiet order, the gentle sunlight through the windows, and the maid attending to details with calm efficiency. Her presence was more than service. It was a symbol of humanity, integrity, and unwavering care. He approached her one last time, gratitude clear in his eyes. "You stayed when no one else would," he said. "You cared without asking for anything. You taught me more than I can say." The maid nodded, smiling softly. "I only did what was right," she repeated. "That is all anyone can do." That quiet moment, the man understood the depth of the truth he had discovered. True care is not loud, dramatic, or performative. It is quiet, persistent, and selfless. It is present when it is difficult, consistent when it is unnoticed, and unwavering when the world turns away. The test he had set, though silent and unspoken, had revealed the essence of human connection. Loyalty, honesty, and care had been proven through quiet actions, not words or gestures meant for attention. The maid had embodied these truths, teaching him a lesson that would guide his life forever. From that day forward, the man lived with a renewed understanding of the world. He recognized and honored genuine care, nurtured loyalty, and valued presence over pretense. The maid remained a central part of his life, her quiet dedication continuing to inspire and guide him. Together, they represented the enduring power of honesty, humanity, and the beauty of love that asks for nothing in return. In the calm of the home, the sunlight falling through the windows, and the steady rhythm of daily life, the man understood that he had witnessed and experienced something rare and profound. The lessons learned, the observations made, and the quiet presence of true care had transformed him. He knew that loyalty and love, when genuine, could withstand any test, and that the quiet, selfless acts of one person could reveal more truth about humanity than the loud words of many.